This tutorial is for 4th grade, Module 5, Lesson 12. In Lesson 12, we're going to look at fractions on a number line and use those number lines to compare fractions. Up until this point, we've looked at fractions as part of an area model or part of a tape diagram. It's also very important for students to be able to locate fractions on a number line. In this section, we'll plot each of the following points, and then we'll use these number lines to compare our fractions. The first fraction we need to find is 1/3. So you can see that we've started with 0 at one end of the number line and 1 whole at the other end. The fraction 1/3 tells me that we've broken our whole into 3 pieces, and then I need to find the end of one of those pieces. So each of these marks is representing a third. So if I need 1/3, I'll put my dot on the first mark and show that that is my 1/3 mark. Now what I like to do as well is highlight the section from the 0 to the 1/3, so the students understand that we're talking about that whole section as being 1/3. By highlighting that section, I think it gives students a good visual cue on how big that fraction actually is. In the next section, we have 5/6. Again, our whole has been broken into the 6 pieces. I need 5 of those. So if I start at the 0, I can just count. So I have 0/6, 1/6, 2/6, 3/6, 4/6, 5/6. So there's my 5/6. And I will shade in that whole section of the number line to give us a better idea of how big 5/6 is. The next fraction we need to locate is 7/12. From 0 to 1 whole, the number line has been divided into 12 pieces. So I'm just going to count from the 0 until I count 7 of them. So I have 0/12, 1/12, 2/12, 3/12, 4/12, 5/12, 6/12, 7/12. So here's my 7/12, and I'll write that as the fraction above. And I'll highlight that portion of the number line as well. Now I can use these number lines to make my comparisons. The first comparison is 7/12 as it's compared to 1/3. So you can see that the 1/3 stops at this point on the number line. 7/12 is farther along the number line than the 1/3. Or another way to look at it is 7/12 is farther away from 0 than the 1/3. That tells us that 7/12 is greater than 1/3. The farther we get away from the 0 on the right-hand side, the bigger the fraction. Question B is having us compare 7/12 to 5/6. 5/6 is further along the number line or farther away from 0 than the 7/12. That tells us that 5/6 is the larger fraction. That means that 7/12 is less than 5/6. In this section, we're going to use a fraction chart to compare fractions to 1/2. You can see each level of the fraction chart shows the whole being divided into a different number of pieces. The 1/2 is highlighted because the fractions we're comparing in this section are all being compared to that 1/2. It's important for students to understand that the 1/2 section ends at the line. So this whole piece is considered 1/2. The first comparison is 1/2 compared to 3/4. So I will move down to my 4th section and I'll find the 3/4. And again, it's important that the students understand that 3/4 ends at the line. So this whole section is considered 3/4. And you can see that 1/2 is less than 3/4. Next, I'm going to compare 1/2 to 7/8. I'll move down to my 8th section and I'll find 7/8. And this line shows me where 7/8 ends. That means this whole piece all the way up to that line is the 7/8. And 7/8 is farther along than the half. So again, 1/2 is less than 7/8. And next I'll compare the 1/2 to 2/5. I'll move to my 5th section Find the 2/5. Here's the line that shows me where 2/5 ends. That means this entire piece represents the 2/5, and that is less than the 1/2. That tells me then that 1/2 is greater than 2/5. So this is just another visual that we can use to compare our fractions.